PK in the universe, and I am back again with another video. And today I'm here to talk about, do we appreciate the games we already have in our own video game collection? This is a topic that I saw not too long ago. This video I think I saw from like over a year ago. It was from this YouTuber called Retrobird. And Retrobird talked about some really interesting things, like there's different ways we can appreciate our games. For example, just simply looking at our games on our shelf or in our drawer or wherever we're looking at our games. Playing games, obviously, is a way of appreciating games. But I thought that was really an interesting topic, and I wanted to add my take on it. I think that there is something to that. I think there's a lot of different ways to play games, and I think our video game collection isn't just only our physical games we own, it's our digital games too. For example, games we've downloaded on Steam, games we've downloaded on the Nintendo Switch, PS4, etc., etc. There's so many digital games. We don't really necessarily don't appreciate those games as much, or maybe we appreciate them more because maybe we see them in our library more of just when we just turn our console on or our PC on. It just depends, really. I think there's a fine line of what does it mean to appreciate. I mean, the definition of appreciate is to understand the value and worth of something, and how we understand that value is different from person to person. I'm not just talking about monetary value. I'm not talking about, oh, Earthbound is worth $300. I'm talking about, what it means to us. Why it matters to us more than just the monetary value, but like personal value. Our, how we interpret this thing, this piece of data, this plastic with data inside it, how we interpret that in our own minds. A good example I will use is, if you guys watched my recent video, in my recent video I talked about how I got my childhood games back and some of my best friends' games as well. And the game, I was most excited to get was Super Mario RPG. As I said in my last video, this is a game that my mom ordered for me from the JCPenney catalog, and it was a really big deal when I got this. I mean, the game had come out in May of that year, and I got it for Christmas, or my birthday. I can't remember. My birthday and Christmas are a week apart. But, so it meant a lot to me personally, and this is the first video game I ever beat. Well, here's the thing about this game. It doesn't have, obviously this has gone up a lot in price over the last 10 years, but it's a game that has so much sentimental value to me. Now, unfortunately, this game, the game save battery no longer works. In fact, Andy told me about that, my friend who got this for me, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate, but it still has huge meaning and value to me personally, just because it's the very first game. Not only is it the first game I ever beat, but that cartridge right there is the first game I ever beat, and to hold it in my hand means a lot to me personally. I really appreciate and value that. And if I really, honestly, just need to play this physically on a Super Nintendo, I do have another copy. And this copy also has sentimental value to me. And the reason it does is because I got this along with my Super NES Junior I got this at a flea market 10 years ago. And this experience at the flea market was significant because this was one of my wife and I's very first dates when we first started dating. She had known me for about 5 months. We had been dating online, and she came out to California to see me. I was stationed in California at the time. She was living in Illinois, still lives in Illinois. Obviously, we both do now. And this was one of our first dates. I think our first date was like we went to see a movie and maybe we went to a restaurant or something, but this was one of our first dates, and because we both love going to the flea market, and we both look for very different things at the flea market, but we both love going to the flea market. That was something we like to do together. And yeah, she actually helped me haggle some guy. We got this game, and we got the Super NES Junior all for $40, and I think the guy wanted $60, and she talked him down. So that holds a really special place in my heart. That really means something to me. So this has sentimental value, and it has a functional value in that I can play this and save the file. So I understand the worth of this particular game. Speaking of my wife, recently I bought the Disney 16-bit collection on PS4. And the reason I bought it was because I had some Target gift cards. Her birthday was coming up, and I thought this would be a cool surprise. This was not her birthday present. I'm going to get her something actually that she really wants. But I thought this would be a great surprise because we've talked about playing Aladdin on Sega Genesis. That is a game she is way better at than me because that is a game she has had since childhood. I actually have a copy of Aladdin on Sega Genesis, complete in box, because, you know, we actually bought that together. We went to TNT Games, which is a retro game store at Harvard. It used to be in Harvard, Illinois. It's no longer there. It's long since closed down. But I actually remember her and I going to that store together and me buying that because I had her in mind. Well, I got that PS4 collection. Well, I get that since we already have this on Sega Genesis. Well, of course, we have her actual original Sega Genesis. We have her original Sega Genesis, the Model 2 one. And we have that game, but she never wants to come down to the basement and play it. So I'm like, we always seem to be always playing the PS4. Her and my son love to play Rayman Legends on PS4. The PS4 is kind of our go-to family game system. You know, you'd think it'd be the Switch, but the Switch is just, I don't know. It's you know, it's a portable system. We don't have we don't have any pro controllers for it. We have other like controllers that you have to plug in, which is really annoying. But that's kind of our family go-to system, so I thought that'd be perfect for her. It was funny, too. My son tried to play the 16-bit versions, and he didn't like it. He thought it was just way too hard. I'm like, well, I didn't buy it for you, son. I bought it for Amy. You know, I bought it for her. I had it for her in mind when I bought that. You know, I could tell that meant something to her, you know, because, you know, that was a part of her childhood. It was something she enjoyed playing. So she saw the value in that, whereas Jack did not appreciate the value in that because those games are too hard for him. You know, he's more used to stuff that's more modern, that's more forgiving. And these old Aladdin games or whatever, you know, they're not that forgiving. And I think it came with the Jungle Book and Lion King as well. It was weird too. Funny enough, it came with an instruction booklet, which I thought was really cool. But the weird thing is it only came with the Aladdin Sega Genesis instruction booklet. That's all it had, which is really strange. Another thing, too, was kind of annoying is I couldn't figure out at first how to make the screen, you know, fill up to actually be a square. It was just a tiny little square in the middle. But I figured out how to do that later on. You just press, like, the PS button or whatever. It wasn't the most user-friendly, but I figured it out. So she'll be able to enjoy that and not have to go down to this cold, cold basement to play Aladdin on the Sega Genesis. You know, that's a game that meant something to her and she recognized that. I think we all recognize games that, you know, we played as a kid always seem to mean more to us. Like the game Quest 64. Another example of a game my wife actually bought for me at a flea market one time for like $10 or something like that. I remember playing that game as a kid. You know, I have some memories of playing that. That's a game when I look at it, I think, oh man, I played that as a kid and my wife got it for me. I see the value in that. I think games that we're so closely connected to, we can see the value more clearly. But games that we just bought because they were cheap, you know, we just found them for $1 at a thrift store that we don't know a lot about, we don't appreciate them. I think the bigger video game collection you have, the harder it is to truly appreciate what you have. Like if it's I got the Evercade behind me, you know, I've played most of these games on the Game of the Month last year, so there's a few games I still need to explore that weren't on Game of the Month, but I already see the value in this collection because there's games on here I enjoyed. And there's some games I did enjoy, so maybe I don't see the value in it. You know, maybe I see a value in specific games on a collection, but I don't see the value overall of those games in the collection, you know, because maybe I'm like, oh, that game isn't fun, you know. I think, yeah, the bigger collection you have and the more games you have, the harder it is to overall appreciate your collection, or maybe appreciate the way you think you should. I truly believe when it comes to a collection, I don't have a backlog. My son has a backlog, and he should be embarrassed about how few games he's beaten, you know, being only 6 years old. But here nor there, here nor there. I like to think of my collection as a library, and I've said this in other videos. The thing about a library is when you go to the public library, nobody expects you to read every book in the public library. And nobody expects you or should expect you to play every single game you have in your library of games. And I think it's great to think about your game collection as a library, because if you think of it as a backlog, it becomes a burden and not a blessing. And I think you should think of these games as a blessing, because there's so many people across the world who don't have access to a lot of video games, or any at all even. You know, it's a first world problem to have too many video games. And I really don't think we appreciate games the way we should. So when you look at your games, I mean, yes, you can look at your game and appreciate it And there's some games we're never going to play again. And that's okay. And you have to come to the realization and acceptance that that's okay. Some games, yeah, they should, you know, do I really need 4 copies of Defender on Atari 2600? Absolutely not. But I do love my Atari 2600 collection. I love the aesthetic of it. I love how these games are pre-NES. You know, I grew up playing NES. And every once in a while, I do really like to pop in an Atari 2600 game, just the old way, the old style, and just have some fun. My son's very first video game he ever played was Space Invaders on the Atari 2600. So when I see that game, I think, that's the first game I let my son play. You know, that means something to me, and I hope someday maybe it means something to him. I don't know. But, because my first game was Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt. That's a game I look at in my collection, and I think that's the first game I ever played, so it means something to me. You know, games from your childhood are always going to mean something more to you. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the concept of, do we appreciate our games? At the end of the day, I don't think we do. I think we appreciate our games to a point. And I think the more games you have, the harder it is to appreciate all the games you have. But I do think we appreciate some of the games we have. But do I think we appreciate our whole entire collection as a whole? I think that depends entirely on how big our collection is. So, what are your guys' thoughts? Do you think you would really appreciate your game collection? Comment below. I would love to hear what you have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay awesome in this universe. Thanks.